2 years ago, Americans watched in horror as a crisis unfolded at the Kabul airport.
She was tear-gassed and beaten.
Images of thousands desperate to escape Taliban oppression filled our news feeds. More than 80,000 Afghans made it to America. But the story didn't end there.
It was very cold. There was no power, no heat.
Who would help our newest neighbors? I'm Andrea Smartin. In Stranger Becomes Neighbor, you'll hear the stories of some remarkable refugees who left their homes and their dreams behind, only to start over from zero.
Their only possession was 3 blankets.
And you'll meet Americans who stepped up to help them.
You want me to come when you deliver your baby.
What can one person do in the face of an international disaster decades in the making? That's Stranger Becomes Neighbor. Find us at kslpodcast.com. Follow us on Apple Podcasts or anywhere else you listen.
Welcome to Project Recovery, a podcast about addiction, but more importantly, it's about recovery. My name is Casey Scott, and my road to recovery began with Pinnacle Recovery Center. If you know somebody who needs some help, have them do what I did and give Pinnacle a call. Our guest today is Nate Child. We're going to talk to him in just a second, but before that, we always check in with Dr. Matt, who's messing with his microphone. What's going on, buddy?
It's good.
If you play with that too much, you'll go blind.
Is that what they say?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so I want to get to a couple things before we bring Nate in.
All right.
First and foremost,
Yeah.
I was up at the Capitol today.
Ooh.
Hobnobbing with the bigwigs.
Were you?
Well, no, I was actually
It wasn't even your 5th grade field trip.
No, it wasn't. But there was this is a true story. So I got there a little early because the parking lot was jammed, and so I had to park down the street. Well, I go in, and I'm walking around. There's a gun rally below. Legislation's in, so there's a bunch of people moving and shaking, and there's a science fair. And so I was like, I got to go to the bathroom. And I go into the bathroom, and there's 5 5th graders who are taller than me. And I was like, this sucks, man.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to make sure. And it's like, so, hey, what grade are you guys in? Which is not a good question to ask kids when they're in the bathroom. You know what I mean? It's not a good
At
thing
the Capitol.
Yeah, it's like at the Capitol.
Yeah.
Hey, so what
There
grade
might be security around.
So what grade are you guys in?
Yeah.
We're in 5th grade.
Come here often?
Yeah, no. And so I was like, man, it sucks when 5th graders are taller than you. You know what I'm talking about, Matt.
Yeah.
Right?
We're about the same height.
My license says I'm 5'11".
That's a big fat lie.
Yes, you can put whatever you want.
I know you can.
Yeah.
That's why mine says 5'10".
But before we came in here and to record the podcast today, Matt, you asked me and Josh a question.
Yeah.
And that question was about our reading habits.
Okay, yeah, I gave you a little bit of a hard time.
Because you were telling us that you think it's a travesty that Josh...
I don't think I used that word.
Well, I'm making you sound smarter because you're the doctor. But
Okay,
you were
thanks.
mad at us that neither of us have read The Wizard of... No? Alice in Wonderland. Even the guest got it.
Yeah.
Alice in Wonderland.
The Wizard of Oz.
But why would you read that book when Johnny Depp does it so well?
Oh, the book is so much better. So much better.
We get in these
It's
little...
a very clever, well-written, very quotable book. I mean, Alice in Wonderland is one of the all-time
Lewis
great.
Carroll?
Yeah, Lewis Carroll's the author.
And so we were in a little text chain throughout the week, and you were quoting Lewis Carroll, and Josh, who's our millennial producer, goes, Lewis Carroll? Who's that? And I thought maybe it was one of the Kardashians. But
I just gave it a ha-ha.
Yeah, ha-ha.
Yeah.
And then you wrote us this long text.
Well, I started off by asking you the famous riddle.
I don't know if you could use the word famous.
Yeah, I think you can.
A riddle. Okay, what is the riddle?
Why is a raven like a writing desk?
And Josh...
Which I thought was funny in the context of the text.
Yeah.
And because we were talking about other things, and then I tagged that on the end. And Josh said, what?
And then you explained it to us in a 2-paragraph text.
Well, it took me a while because I thought you guys knew what I was talking about.
No. You want to know the last book I read?
Yeah, I do.
The Call of the Wild, 7th grade.
Now, why did you do that? The movie's coming out.
With Harrison Ford? They say it's not going to be true. There's nothing like the book.
Yeah, that was a great book.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite books as a kid. I love that book.
And that's really the last book I read in 7th grade.
Really?
Yeah.
Shut up.
Swear.
Books are amazing. When I was a young kid, I was a slow reader. And it wasn't until I got into about junior high that I started really getting into reading certain things. And there's nothing compares to a really well-written book.
What book are you reading right now?
Well, I'm usually reading 2 or 3 at a time. I just finished Hardcore, A Life of My Own, the autobiography of Harley Flanagan, who's a hardcore musician, punk hardcore musician.
Okay.
I am Under the Banner of Heaven, Krakau's book about the Lafferty brother murders here in Utah. I'm almost finished with that. And then last night I went to bed reading Heaven and Hell selected poems from William Blake, that's an old timer.
I can't believe we're friends. That's just crazy. But let's get to the podcast. And reading is fundamental. I remember that from 6th grade.
Say it the right way. Fundamental. There we go.
That's right.
Okay.
Hey, so our guest today is Nate Child. Nate, how are you?
Smith, yeah.
Smith, man.
That's all right. That's all right.
And I had this whole
That
thing.
wasn't even close to Smith.
No, but I wanted to surprise you because I think our guest last week was Christian Smith.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Any relation?
That's my uncle.
That's the surprise I was telling you about.
That is a surprise. Because I thought that was the dumbest question I'd ever heard, if 2 Smiths were related.
No.
Yeah, especially in Utah.
In Utah, yeah. But I guess maybe they're all related somehow.
So after Christian came on and was probably one of the most honest, open, and raw
he was fun.
interviewers we've ever had.
It was fun. I've had a lot of feedback this week on how fun it was to have him, like his personality.
He reached out to me and says, hey, I think you need to talk to my nephew.
Okay.
And I talked to him, and I was like, yeah, I think this is going to be kind of cool. So let's just kind of get into your story of why you're here.
Okay, yeah. So
he's here because his uncle made
it. He texted me. He's like, hey, would you be open to sharing your story with Casey and Dr. Matt? And I was like, who the was Casey and Dr. Matt?
Oh, so you can tell he's a Smith. He swore already.
Right. Sorry about that.
They are related.
That's what I said.
Sorry, Mom.
Christian has the swearing record on this podcast right now.
And
he holds a testimony.
Even more than
Brandon Novak.
Brandon Novak.
Who's eloquent with the F word.
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
I'll try not to break that.
No,
record.
you're good.
Yeah.
So he said, would you share your story? What is your story?
So I have been battling depression for a number of years and kind of have found some reprieve through the ketamine treatments. So Chris and I have talked quite a bit. I call him Chris. I think Christian's like his reborn name, his sober name, which is totally cool, or Christian. So, but so I grew up here in Sandy. There's 5 of us in the family. I'm right in the middle. Dad and mom were great, kind of the model LDS family, pretty similar to how Christian was raised. Dad was always in the bishopric or stake presidency. Grandpa was in the first presidency. President Faust was my grandfather growing up. I remember 5th grade, oddly enough, when he was called into the first presidency. I got to stay home a little bit in the morning to watch them, because I think Dad knew, but we didn't know, and we didn't know how that was working, but I was late to school, so I was like, yeah, I'll watch whatever you want me to watch as long as I don't have to go to school. So
your LDS pedigree is pretty strong.
Yeah, pretty strong, yeah. It is. Yeah, the Smith line goes up pretty high on the other side, too. So kind of just there, and that's kind of what we did. I served an LDS mission in Fort Worth, Texas. 2 years. It was a blast. Actually dated my wife. We started dating when we were 16, end of sophomore year. So that was kind of a fun time. Kind of always more of a extrovert. Kind of, I love to integrate and talk to people, and my grades suffered because I was always, worried about friends and stuff. And now in hindsight, I wish I would have read more books, man. So
I can recommend a few.
Yeah, seriously. So kind of making up for some of that, right? Like, we have 4 kids. So my wife and I got married and
high school sweethearts.
High school sweethearts.
Wow.
She waited
that doesn't
for me.
happen very often.
No, it doesn't. We wrote every week on the mission. And then when I got back in May of 2005, we got engaged in August, married in December. So
wow, pretty typical.
Quick. Yeah, right? Nothing
just seems
nothing
so
crazy.
fast.
But we'd spent enough time before.
I'm just teasing you. We had one guy on the podcast who got married in 7 days. Remember that?
That's right.
Crazy.
Yeah,
he holds a record.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is the record.
But throughout your high school and all that, did you ever dabble in alcohol or drugs or any of that?
I did a little bit, yeah. So I did, a little weed. I think I've had 1 can of beer my whole life. It's not very good.
Yeah, the way you say that,
Yeah,
it makes me believe
it was
you.
like natural light, which was like the cheapest stuff that my friends could find. So
Casey beat your record.
Yeah. It's a show of records.
Yeah.
So you've had one can of beer.
Smoked some weed. So kind of dabbled in that in high school, just kind of experimenting a little bit. Nothing really crazy. Pretty normal childhood.
To tie that back to Christian and your uncle, did you know about any of that going on?
I did. So his son Adam, he's a year younger than I am, but we were pretty close as cousins, and we'd actually go to Uncle Chris' house and we'd gamble with him. And he'd always kick our ass because we never. I don't know what I'm doing right, but he would always. Oh yeah, you
I
guys
can see that. I think.
I think
he could take all of us.
It'd be the same way with golf. Oh yeah, I've never played golf, and so you bet he'd kick your ass again. It's the same thing.
Yeah, he had a whole shtick that he let us in on last time.
Yeah. So, but kind of knew something was up, right? So, kind of didn't really understand it until when I was born with a heart defect, and so I kind of throughout high school and stuff, I wasn't really allowed to go play like high school sports. We played rec stuff mainly just because we were probably poor. We just didn't know it, like kind of everybody else. We never went without. But with 5 kids, I made the Sparta team, and mom and dad are like, that's too expensive. So, which is fine and understandable, but. So, you kind of fast forward. We got married in December of 2005. I went in for open heart surgery April 2006.
Whoa. Did you know you were going to need to do that at the time?
Kind of at the time I was actually exercising, and kind of feeling weird. And so I called the doctor and he said, don't exercise until we talk to you. And so I was like, okay, whatever. I don't know what that means. And he called and said, we've met as a doctor board, and we think we got to just replace the valve since childhood, right? So I've kind of been followed every 6 months, whatever. So
it's weird that the doctor would tell you not to exercise, and the doctor tells Dr. Matt to exercise.
Yeah, we're on opposite ends of that spectrum.
I was like 22. So,
Yeah.
But at the time, interestingly enough, we were living in my grandparents' house. Which is next door to Elder Bednar and Elder Hells.
Where President Faust's house.
No, Grandpa Smith's.
Oh,
so
okay.
We found out about 2 months in that Uncle Chris was coming to live in the basement apartment.
Oh, that house he talked about.
We knew he was a full addict. And there were times we'd wake up and he was doing what? I honestly don't know. I thought he was making meth, to be completely honest. And I remember going out and putting something in the garbage, and there was like a 12-pack of Budweiser or something out there. So I went down there, I'm like, hey, Jack, like, do you know who's next door to like this house that you can basically touch? I'm like, he's like, oh, that's not mine. I'm like, okay.
That's Bednar's.
Okay, great, whatever. Oh, and he was just full addiction, didn't know what was going on. There was a time where he was going to try to take his own life, and ended up with the police at our house, at my grandparents' house, and we were just in the master bedroom because they were serving a mission in Greece, and so we kind of had to deal with that. Never really had, I think everybody goes through this depressed episodes, right? Whether it's you're feeling crappy at a job that you don't like, or you're getting bad grades, or you're pissed off because some girl doesn't like you, whatever. There's these depressive episodes. So there was definitely certain times in my life where I felt like I was. Had kind of struggled with whatever, whether it was, not really wanting to go on a mission, but feeling like I kind of had to go on a mission just because of who, my
your
relationship.
Lineage.
Yeah, exactly. So you kind of feel pressure there, and these feelings you don't really know how to deal with. I felt like I was kind of always like a little anxious. I'd call my mom before school. I'm like, she worked full time as a teacher. Like, I don't want to go to school. This is crazy. Like, who wants to do this? And so she'd kind of talk me. You need to go. It's really good. Blah blah blah. So, well, you kind of fast forward. Uncle Chris kind of moved out. I think they kicked him out, and we kind of said, I'm not doing this crap anymore. He had come into the house and came upstairs, and broke in. He didn't break in. I think the door was unlocked, but I didn't think anything of it. Well, at the time I had painkillers, right? Because I had open heart surgery, and I had been pretty cautious about how many I had, and we had some tithing money out, the cash that was out, and he'd taken some of that, and like weird things like a roll of toilet paper, like a bag of chips. I think he maybe took like a half a gallon of milk. Like things you're like, did we have milk? I thought we had milk. And
that all sounds like stuff I'd steal.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Toilet paper, chips, and some milk.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And which, was fine. But so I called my dad and like, dude, I'm going to go down and kick his ass. like, he's like, you really just had open heart surgery? You're going to go out and try to fight some guy?
Your uncle?
Yeah. So, we there was a while there that I hated the guy. I thought he's a dirtbag. Why would you steal from me? Not understanding the addiction and understanding what happens. And so we kind of went through life, got married, and kind of started having kids like you're supposed to do, right? And 2 years later, I kind of started having some more problems. So went for another open heart surgery. They put in a mechanical valve this time, and kind of just started kind of in and out of these depressive, moments. Lasted a little bit longer. Kind of the why me. 4 months in, we had medical debt. Where most couples aren't experiencing stuff like that. It's student loans, which is like, it's kind of normal. But to go in and have, full open heart surgery and deal with all that. And it was hard for my wife, to do that. Luckily, we didn't have kids the first one. The second one, we had a baby. I think he was a couple months old. So he was July, so whatever, 4 months old. I couldn't hold him other than sitting on the couch and putting him on my lap just because I couldn't lift anything over 10 pounds. And so as the story progresses, I kind of pretty standard stuff, that people deal with, trying to make money for your family. Yeah, exactly. Just doing that. My little sister kind of started going through some of the addiction stuff, and we didn't know what was going on. And, so we as a family kind of had to experience that all over again. And Dad because my grandparents were out of the country, Dad kind of had to step in and be the parent for Uncle Chris. And he helped him, and there was some resentments there, I think, and we kind of felt those. And so when my little sister kind of went through her addictions, it was kind of eye-opening, right? So I kind of removed myself from the family. So I kind of got into this habit of kind of isolating myself and my family, kind of protecting them from this, horrendous addictions that the people are kind of afraid of, these stigmas that are out there. And it was like, I think I tried to write a timeline here. I think so. At about 2016, I remember I was kind of trying to run more and tried to do some ultra marathon running, which is anything over 26 miles, which seems stupid, I know, but it was kind of fun.
Especially after having 2 open heart surgeries.
Yeah. We fast forwarded from not being able to lift 10 pounds to running an ultra marathon.
Yeah, well, I don't. Yeah, it took a while to get up to that point, but kind of got injured, foot flared up, and kind of had to step back a little bit. And then I kind of started having some of these feelings of depression, and as a guy, I had these childhood expectations set, whether they were fair or unfair, or whether I put them on myself or whatever. But they were there because of how I was raised, and this model of LDS living that our family could have been on the cover of Family Home and Evening. That's just how we were taught. Yeah, totally. Yeah, right.
I didn't get the Family Home and Evening magazine.
Yeah, yeah. So, but we could have done that. But kind of started to have some of these feelings of depression and anxiety, and kind of just that dialogue in my head just kind of kept going. And
what about just backing up to you're newlywed, and then unfortunately you have to have this major surgery, and then you have a new baby, but then you have to have a major surgery. Mm-hmm. Depression, did it seem to sneak in during those times at all?
Maybe a little bit. More of like discouragement, like kind of the why me kind of an attitude of like, why do I have to do this? I was born
which
with
might
it, so
be
it wasn't
kind of normal. I mean,
totally. Yeah.
One of the things that's hard about talking about depression and major depression, clinical depression, is that many people who haven't experienced real severe bouts of depression will say, "Oh, I've been depressed. I know. You just have to exercise and eat right and clean your room and all that kind of stuff." And they don't understand the difference. So it's important for a person also to understand that you may go through periods of time when you have typical depressive responses to stressors, but then it kind of feels different. Then it shifts.
Absolutely, yeah. So maybe mild depression. I wouldn't have called myself depressed. Just kind of.
But that word gets thrown around like Dr. Matt's saying a lot. It's oh, he's just depressed. Yeah. But there is a difference between, oh, he's just depressed or being in depression.
Real, what we call clinical depression,
yeah. Major.
And do you think I noticed you mentioned that once you got injured and had to stop running, that the depression increased.
I think there was something
there's
there.
There's
and
often
I haven't
a
quite
correlation.
figured that out. Yeah.
Exercise is helpful to our moods. And when a person is somewhat relying on a healthy lifestyle like running and, that prolonged exercise, when it goes away, they're a little bit more susceptible to depression.
Sure. Yeah, totally agree. And it, and those things could kind of come to light a little bit and kind of, you kind of see that kind of stuff happen. And even today, you talk to my brothers or, little sister, and I think it happens to, like you said, almost everybody kind of experiences these episodes and these things. But
you've got some serious stuff going on in your life. You have a younger sister battling addiction. You've watched your uncle go through it. You've had 2 open heart surgeries. And so, your plate is pretty full.
Yeah. And
now you can't run really. And so it switched from being just kind of a feeling to an actual state of mind.
Yeah. State of mind. Yeah. Kind of the dialogue in my head became louder. More just, it was kind of the 2017, 2018 was kind of the denial stage, right? Like, I don't have depression. Like, you see it on the mission a little bit. These guys are getting depressed. You're like, man, just pull your head out. Like, just let's go. Like, I don't understand what's going on. And that's just naive and stupid, right? It's the same thing with like a porn addict, for example. You're like, dude, just stop looking at it. It's not like,
or you say it to an alcoholic.
Yeah, just stop drinking.
Just quit drinking.
Yeah, quit shooting up. Just walk away. Just stop hanging out with those friends.
You're
Good
listening
luck.
to Nate Smith on Project Recovery. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back.
Two years ago, Americans watched in horror as a crisis unfolded at the Kabul airport.
There's desperation and anguish.
More than 80,000 Afghans have since arrived in America. But this story is still unfolding. I'm Andrea Smartin. In my new podcast, Stranger Becomes Neighbor, we'll find out what happens to these new arrivals in our communities. Who would help our newest neighbors? Follow us at kslpodcast.com, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else you listen.
So you tell them just to stop, but you notice there's something different in you.
Yeah, totally. Yep. Totally something that I'm isolating myself. Family dinners, I'm not talking. Friends are starting to notice. I'm not really willing to talk about it because I don't really know what it is. Not really wanting to show my emotion, to show my inner thoughts. I don't want to discuss this with anybody.
Did you try anything to fix it?
At the time, no. At that point in time, no, I didn't. I just kind of tried to deal with it, try to get back into the running. Oh, this will fix it. This will be my out, Didn't really, at the end of, 2017, 2018, kind of started to get worse, and where I would go weeks without really communicating with my spouse or my children. So I'd come home and I would be there, but I really wasn't present, right? I was just kind of out of it. I never really had those episodes where you couldn't really get out of bed. Like, there's times where like, I don't want to get out of bed, this is tough. But I feel like I always had to go to work and, provide for these kids. And I know people have problems with just being in bed for 3 days at a time,
And just so you know, of course, that does happen, but I think your experience is the more common one.
Yeah.
And for some people, they don't even really clue into the fact that they're depressed because that'll be this kind of marker of, well, I'm still going to work.
Yeah.
I'm still getting up, I'm going to work, so I can't be depressed. And they have a hard time recognizing that most people still get up and go to work.
Sure.
Men also experience depression a little bit differently than women, typically. Certainly men can have the strong emotions of sadness and stay in bed, definitely. But male pattern depression will often include a lot of irritability and agitation. They may even seem just as active as they always were, but they're withdrawn emotionally. They don't talk very much. They become irritable, and they still go to work, but they may start to struggle in their relationships at work. And so it's important for people to understand that the depression you're describing is actually very, very common.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. In your opinion, can untreated depression go away?
People have different reasons for being depressed. Some people come to it naturally by their biology. Other people may have what's called a mood disorder where depression comes and goes. And so there is that aspect to it. Sometimes a person hits a period of life where they feel kind of hopeless and discouraged, and because of an outside force, finances, relationships. And when those things change, then the depression can subside. But if you are prone to depression and if you've experienced clinical depression, then you're at risk for it coming right back. So just waiting it out is not a good strategy. The better strategy is, accepting that that's a problem and get some help, because you can retrain patterns of thinking and patterns of behavior which correlate to neural pathways, and you can make permanent changes in the positive direction in your depression. But it's a lot of work. It's like anything. It's like running an ultra marathon. It takes work.
But Nate, it seems like you were trying to wait it out.
Yeah, trying to fix it on my own. I'd grown up with the, square your shoulders, kind of put your head down, and just, buck up. Kind of, that's just kind of the way we were raised.
Which is kind of an attitude that holds a lot of men back from actually getting help for their depression.
Yep. Yeah. You kind of feel just like I'm not like I'm a guy. I don't want to talk about this. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to, do any of that.
So how long did you try to wait it out and hold it out?
Probably for a good year. And then it started getting worse and worse. And I went to the doctor and said, maybe I'll try some Zoloft, And the problem with those medications for me, is that it takes like 4 weeks to start working in your system. And then when it starts working, you're like, okay, is it really working? Or is it helpful? And then I started seeing all the side effects, all the weight gain, the lack of sex drive. I felt like I was always the 1% of this could potentially happen. It happened to me, right? And so I'd get pissed. I'd be like, let's try something else. So then you have to wean off of this medication, and then you have to try something else. So I probably went through, 10 different antidepressants. And during this time, again, I was kind of withdrawing and not really sharing much with my spouse. And it's really, really hard on a marriage when there's zero communication. And I really get the case of the I don't care. I don't want to talk to anybody. And it's just hard to kind of communicate. And part of it is I just didn't know how to communicate. Who do you talk to, right? And so I kind of started to try to self-medicate, right? So drinking, again, kind of came back. I'm 36 now, so I was 34, 35, and I was like, let's go to the bar. Let's get drunk. Let's see what I can do, Marijuana. I'm a believer that some of that stuff's good, right? Because the other stuff just wasn't helping me, and I was still getting depressed, and it was still getting worse, to the point where my wife and I had to go to marriage counseling because it became like a third person in our relationship.
So you were self-medicating?
Yep, self-medicating for sure. But I was nervous to do that because of Chris and my sister, and I have a cousin, so it's on both sides where I'm scared that I'm going to try something and I'm going to like it. It's going to numb the pain, and then I'm screwed.
Off to the races.
Yeah, exactly. And then I'm back in the road that I've seen before. I know what that looks like, and that's like, I don't want that, So there's a happy medium of like trying to live on the edge a little bit, see if it helps, and if it helps, okay, we'll go down that road if it comes. But I can handle it because I've been to these recovery classes, and this recovery jargon's just bull. And I can do this.
You
right?
keep dipping your toe in the water.
Yeah, exactly. Trying to figure out what's going on.
So you go to a relationship counselor because your marriage is strained because of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Not helpful. Because I don't like talking about it, right? I don't like being vulnerable. I'm a guy, and again, that's just how we were raised, right? My dad never shared emotion. To this day, he struggles, right? He just never. We never had that like bond, right? Chris talked about it in his podcast when you guys were talking to him about his dad. It's the same thing. It's that old school mentality of, you walk in like, Dad, I'm pretty sure I broke my arm. Well, let's put an ace bandage on it, and if it still hurts, then in a week we'll go get it looked at. It's like, okay, now it's like, what? Let's go get it. It's just a totally different. But that's the mentality that I'm dealing with, and so, having Grandpa Faust being in the first presidency and all these things, then he died in 2007. So and I had nothing to do with that, and he didn't have anything to do with me. But those fundamental teachings that just don't go away, right? That I feel like I was, going against by trying to self-medicate. And again, the case of the I just said, I don't care. Like I'm trying to help myself. And it just started to kind of go down a hole, and it got pretty bad. My kids started to notice I was really short with them, and we have an 11-year-old, a 9-year-old, a 6-year-old, and almost 4-year-old girl. So 3 boys and a little girl. And the 2 older ones are starting to kind of pick up on what's going on. Like they don't want me around. So what does that put? So I start thinking, okay, well maybe I shouldn't be around. And by that I mean maybe I should just end this pain and this misery, because it just sucks. There's no one to talk to. Anytime you bring it up with your spouse, it's like trying to bring up finances, because it's like just always an argument. Well, what do you mean you're depressed? Well, I don't feel like this, or I don't feel like that. And it's really, really tough. It's a big strain. And it was hard. It was really hard trying to go through that. And like I said, we went weeks without communicating, and that just doesn't fly in a marriage with 4 kids.
Was she trying to get you to talk about
Yeah,
things?
sure. Yeah, she's been great and super helpful. But at some point, it's kind of like I can't help you, right? Like it's the same thing with the addiction. Like I can't do anything for you. Like
a lot of times, there's a term called emotional vocabulary, and girls are typically in our culture socialized to learn an emotional vocabulary. From a young age, they talk to each other about their thoughts and their feelings, and moms talk to daughters and all that kind of stuff. But boys rarely have an emotional vocabulary, and so when you hit an emotional crisis, it's hard to know how to say anything more than I feel bad.
Yeah, totally. I feel like I've seen some of the women, though, that have had it, that I've talked to. You post something on Instagram, you get a lot of direct messages, and I feel like they're kind of running into that same problem, though, now, is that they don't know how to, like, I'm supposed to be able to have words for how I feel, but now that I'm in it, and my mind is foggy and it's not operating properly.
Depression warps your perception.
Yeah.
It is difficult when you're in the midst of a depression to know how to describe what's going on.
Yeah.
I think guys just have a little bit harder time.
I totally agree.
Than women.
Yeah.
But and your perception of reality changes as well.
Yeah.
Totally. You're listening to Project Recovery, a podcast about addiction. We're listening to Nate Smith talk about his depression, what he's gone through, and what he's doing now. Make sure you tune in to part 2 to find out what results he found and where he found them.
The contents of this program are for informational purposes only. The program is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician, licensed therapist, or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you've heard on this program. KSL does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, physicians, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned on the program. Reliance on any information provided on the program is solely at your own risk.